the situation in Paria. He's calling for $5 million. I think he's agreeing with that figure to be given to the families. And I think part of the argument is, it's difficult to know exactly if this amount is the correct amount or not. But the flip side is twofold. One, how do you put a price tag on a human life, on human loss, right? And at the end of the day, even Mr. Ali Sr., who the Prime Minister might try to imply, or maybe he was implying others, has made enough money within his life, but he lost his son, and a family lost its husband and father. So how do you put a price to that? Here's the second thing though. Usually, with things like this, you're worried about precedent. You're about precedent about how the response will go. Precedent will set expectations for the next time. Precedent will set expectations for when they have accidents like these, what could the family members expect to receive, whether it is treatment, communication, whether it is assistance. And in my mind, I have no issue setting a precedent that we don't want to be repeated, because the fact of the matter is we don't want this situation to be repeated. That's the thing. This is not a wage negotiation where, well, we don't want to set a precedent too high and we overpay somebody. 4 men died and 1 man had to live through that tragedy and the aftermath. And the aftermath. And I think I have no issue giving them a relatively high number. I mean, it's arbitrary, right? But I think the main thing, though, is transparency, because with regards to all of this process now, all we know is that the Commission of Inquiry, they did their job, and to some extent, questions about transparency were within the realm of possibility, were strong enough, were at the forefront, on the horizon enough, that even King's Counsel Jerome Lynch had to have a final session where, among other things, he basically said, if it was up to me, I would give it to you now. And he basically spoke his fears, and he gave voice to fears of many people, myself included, that it would be unknown when it would be released. And thankfully, we will have to give them some kudos, at least some, to the government. It was laid in Parliament, nothing was redacted, but the conspiracy theorists will still have a field day, because what is going on now? Part of the problem is, in TNT, things move slow. The courts move slow, the bureaucracy moves slow, and sometimes it's not that nothing is happening, it's just that it's happening so slow. By the time it happens, we'll get word of it years down the line, and nobody would care. And that's a shame. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker for governments. This makes it look like you're trying to hide something when you're not even actually trying to hide it. This makes it look like you're trying to hide something and you're not transparent, even though that's not your intention. All of these things work against you. And in my mind, at the end of the day, I would hope, because this is not the first time things like this has happened, right? Where the slow pace of news, the lack of a response, the response is coming. Are you still thinking through what the response should be? It looks bad. That's one of the main points about the Commission of Inquiry report, by the way. The lack of response, the slow response by Paria itself with regards to the critical situation that occurred. One would think that you don't follow that up with potentially taking too long, potentially not being transparent. That's part of it. That's what compounded the tragedy. And ironically, it potentially could be compounding it again. Now, the time frame for this phase of the unfortunate incident is a bit longer than that phase when the incident was unfolding. So we don't want to be rushing to judgment, but I think our political environment has a transparency deficit, and I would just like to caution MP David Lee. Let's just say you get your wishes to come true in 2025, then the UNC will be in the hot seat in the same way, because it's not just one party, it's the environment. But right now, PNM is in power, and the price of power is to face the scrutiny of the public before all others, above all others. That's the whole thing, right? That's the nature of the game. And it saddens me that such simple things seems to be lost by our political elite. And I use quotation marks when I say elite because sometimes, you kind of wonder why certain people are where they are. That, no judgment. That wasn't directed at MP David Lee. That's a statement in general. Let's move on to the next story. Speaking about things taking too long, and one could argue, on one hand, maybe this is fine, timing-wise, and on the other hand, this could be completely unacceptable. And that is because the House has yet to debate on the three deputy commissioners of police candidates who are up for consideration. Of course, that means that these candidates, they're not actually in that job, in that function. Parliament has to debate it, right? So now the question is this going to be a long debate? Is this going to be a political bacchanal debate? Will this be a quick rush thing? I don't expect the latter to be true. Now, maybe in times before, given the current environment of, I don't know, say, our ever-increasing, growing fears of crime, as our level of violence seems to be out of control, even if the murder rate seemingly is stabilizing at a still unacceptable but lower than record-breaking levels. And let's not forget the fact that senior police officers, like senior superintendents, are going on months of leave at a time in the next 2 years, or in some cases, like I believe Senior Superintendent head of the Northern Division, Alexander, your favorite TTPS media personality, from what I understand, if my memory serves correct, he has 2 years, 2 whole years. Now, on one hand, we have a leadership deficit in the police service, and I think one could argue there needs to be more high-level leaders to help deal with what's going on, right? You want to give Airlink a chance, Mr. Prime Minister? Well, here's the thing. You mean to tell me that they have posts of deputy commissioners that still hasn't been filled, and we want to expect the police service to be operating at 100%? Then what's the point of having these jobs in the first place? Why have them? What are these executive jobs to just give people paper promotion so they can be happy with their life? I don't think so. Right? From what I understand, from the days of McDonald J. Cadwell, these positions were more or less vacant. And I'm not too sure if that was the case under Commissioner Griffith. Much less if that was the case under acting Commissioner Stephen Williams. So, why was this not done last year? I don't understand. Half the time, the bills that are put forward to Parliament on the government's behalf, get watered down to nothing. And the opposition does not support just about anything that the government does. And, the supporters will say, of course, and the supporters of the PNM will say, of course, for the reverse reason, they're just opposing for opposing's sake. UNC supporters saying, well, how could we support anything that this wicked so-and-so blah, blah, blah government does? All right. But this is not a bill which will have fine-tooth combs over, unless there's something egregious about these three, or about the whole setup of why they're here. Why is this taking so long with a crime problem that we have? I don't know. What, are we concerned that somebody will show up the commissioner? I mean, technically speaking, I would argue that some of the deputy commissioners, just by virtue of their ability to speak, shows up the commissioner of police. Then that, of course, breaks a chink in the armor of, is she the only candidate that could have been commissioner? What about those guys who are all deputy commissioners or in consideration of deputy commissioners? Because right now, I have a hard time believing things are fine. This will give Airlink a chance. That got tired about, 9 months ago, when things were still out of control. Oh, and just by the way, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but one Mr. Johnny Abraham, controversial figure of his own, he himself has gone into the whole thing about the promotion controversy with the commissioner, right? So They can't even do that. But still, the situation that this is still going to be in Parliament, right? It makes me wonder again, back to the crime talks. Do they really care about coming together to get things done? Because, where is the opposition saying, hey, let's get this done? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a normal time frame, but then I would argue maybe we shouldn't be just operating under a normal time frame. All right, next story. This is kind of funny. This would be funny if it wasn't for the fact that this is actually probably to be expected. Now, you may recall, we just spoke about COVID, by the way, on AM Prime half an hour ago, right? And one of the things that came up during COVID is a work from home policy from the government. And then, for all intents and purposes, public health measures were declared over. And the epidemic, on some practical levels, but technically not actually, was declared over. And we're still waiting for the work from home policy. Now we've had a traffic, dare I say, scandal. It's not really a scandal, right? But I do wonder if enough situations like this keep happening, it'll become something of another controversy. And the Public Administration Minister, Alison West, she has basically said, well, don't wait on the public sector, don't wait on the government, sorry, for a work from home policy. My one issue with this whole entire concept is, I am pretty sure the private sector never was waiting on the government for a work from home policy. During COVID, if my memory is correct, certain private sector entities started to institute a work from home policy. And in some cases, like I think in the case of one bank, they may have maintained to some extent a work from home policy. Now, post-COVID around the world, depending on culture of your organization, as well as the particulars of your workflow and the practical details of how your company functions, work from home doesn't work for everyone. Get that, understand that, right? And of course, there are going to be certain, industries, businesses, jobs. You can't, a supermarket cash counter operator can't work from home. A bank teller can't work from home. You could have online banking, which is what the banks are trying to do. But again, I don't really see the private sector. They didn't wait. Here's the thing though. Who is arguably the largest single employer in the country? The government. And who needs to wait on the government, ironically, to have a work from home policy so they could institute proper work from home policies? That'll be the government. So we're not talking about Sam's Grocery needing a work from home policy, or Jimmy's, Mini Mart needing a work from home policy, or Southwestern Tip Credit Union needing a work from home policy. As far as I'm aware, the government, with regards to a work from home policy, has more or less, it's been, well, we're in the 4th year. Literally. And if work from home policies is potentially one of the tools to deal with our traffic congestion situation, as well as potentially it has other benefits, it reduces the amount of office space you might need, so thereby reducing either maintenance of buildings or rent for buildings, right? DPP had a whole situation paying rent for a building that wasn't secure enough. So how long does it take to develop a policy? I get it, of course, there might be a lot of details involved, but to tell everybody else, well, don't wait on us, private sector, you do your own thing. They've been doing their own thing already. This is kind of ridiculous, if you ask me. And more importantly, I do wonder if by mentioning this, they're trying to not really get into the discussion of maybe certain government services should not be chucked up in the northwest corner of the country, which has a choke point, essentially, as the Eastern Main Road, the priority bus routes, and of course the Churchill Roosevelt Highway all converge into East Port of Spain in various different areas, but at some point it kind of narrows down. The Brian Laura Promenade is not a high traffic thoroughfare. Yes, there are a lot of cars, but it's not meant for high speed. Ryson Road is only so big, and so on and so on. So, There are other ways to solve traffic, and apparently this minister decided she needed to speak about her part, which is probably about 2.5 years too late to actually matter for when it was instituted. And to some extent, it's kind of hilarious that the effort is still ongoing. At this point, I don't know if it even has a point to have it, because as far as I am aware, on a very practical level, a significant amount of the public service technically does work from home because they're not at work and they're collecting a check. Now, it's not my fault if they're not exactly productive when in that mode of operation. Let's put it that way. Let's try and wrap things up with the next story. Well, wrap up the next set of stories. First of all, there's an update. It's a bit, I don't know if it's disappointing or alarming. It's hard to judge. Minister of Education, Dr. Nayan Gasvidal, she confirmed that relevant disciplinary measures were taken. This is with regards to 3 students who were involved with the beating of the Diego Martin Central student that left them unconscious on the roadway. Initial reports that there were 2, now apparently there were 3 boys who assaulted him and who have been punished. Now, it is said that the boys were suspended. Extended suspension. As we got into it with some of our callers, there's a guideline, and usually for significant situations, after 3 incidents, major incidents, it's expulsion. And I'm not advocating for expulsion. I understand that's a very heavy punishment because our society is probably rarely does not have things in place to deal with students who have been expelled from our education system. Yes, we have trade schools and whatnot, but I don't think culturally we've really molded our society and our expectations and to really fully integrate those institutions fully with society, right? Everybody thinks about books, academics, white-collar job. That's one-track mind that we have with regards to education and with regards to someone's future, whether we like it or not, right? How many kids now growing up say they want to be a mechanic because they like cars? I don't know. Maybe there are some out there, but I have not heard a parent yet say, yeah, my son likes cars, my daughter likes cars, they want to be a mechanic, I want them to be a mechanic. I have not heard that. I just have not. Books. Right, okay. With that said, I don't know if, suspensions at times, it seems, gets thrown out like if they were candy. And I do wonder to some extent, okay, boys who have behavioral issues, or girls, it could be girls, but in this case boys, you give them a holiday from school. You give them a holiday from class, you give them a holiday from the work that students are expected to do. So this measure, I don't know if it means anything, right? Prison already does not mean anything with regards to our criminal elements who are not that old. And these boys, I do believe, while they're not legal adults, they're not that young. So I don't know with regards to the various influences on them if this is going to have any sort of effect. And I think we need to take a hard look at ourselves because we don't have easy solutions to situations like this which are complex and severe in their results, because look what happened to that one student. And if we don't figure this out, remember what I said earlier about precedents, right? The criminals see the precedent set by the low detection rate. Students see the precedent and said, oh, well, I'll just get suspended. So what? How is that going to dissuade them? Prison is not dissuading our criminals, and I don't think suspension, one student got suspended 20 times. Obviously, it didn't persuade him. The impact it has on his grades, it's not going to persuade him. So we need something else to reach out to these boys, or we consider, like our caller from Maraval, they're lost. Are we ready to give up on a whole generation effectively? Those that can make it out on their own, good luck to them, Godspeed to them. But what about the rest? And I'll rest my case on that. Next story, running out of time. An unfortunate story. We have spoken to the, I believe it's the president of the Registered Nurses Association, Edie Stewart, before on this. He has sounded the alarm bells before on this. And I don't think it happened because of COVID. It was happening during COVID, and I think to some extent it predates COVID. And he's saying again, we have nurses who they're finding jobs elsewhere because certain jurisdictions like UK, like Canada, etc., like the United States, hey, trained labor that's in demand, and we could get them from the third world, and they'll be happy to come here, and they're willing to come here. Why not, right? Because it meets our needs. They have no incentive to protect us from our inability to ensure that our workforce stays at home. We already have an issue. And this came up, the UNC themselves said it. The hospitals that the government builds are white elephants. Here's the thing. Even before, so I'm talking 10 years ago, I think the People's Partnership might have been in power. And there were shortages then. There were shortages, particularly of things like medicines, drugs, etc., supplies, gloves, needles, etc., right? There were shortages then in our public health system. And the last thing we need now is a shortage of nurses. We already have an issue with doctors and getting enough specialists. Our education system can't treat with everything. We're supposed to be pushing out nurses locally, but it seems like we can't train enough, and we can't retain them. But we already had shortages situations. So when the opposition says that the government hospitals are white elephants, I can't say that that statement is unreasonable. I can't, right? And we keep expanding our facilities, and ooh, we open this and ooh, we open that. But the problems at this point are not a lack of hospitals or health centers. The problem is not enough staff, not enough supplies, not enough drugs in the pharmacy in order to actually do anything. And how long is this going to continue? Now, the new administration building there for the Ministry of Health, I applaud that because it seemed as though it was a reasonable endeavor to get the building at a good, cost-effective and efficient, and in an efficient way. But that's that. We still actually need, the actual business of health care. And I don't know to what extent COVID really further exacerbated the situation, but the last thing we need, we already have an issue with getting jobs for our doctors who do graduate and want to get jobs in here, right? So it's funny how we have some who can't get jobs in the healthcare system, others who aren't being paid enough. They're on 20, 13 salaries, the nurses, they're looking to leave, they need some sort of future security, some sort of financial security in the future. And why not go away? Why not? I mean, look what's happening here. The crime situation is probably not helping. And this is how society slowly degrades. It's not all at once. It's not that the barbarians at the gates of Rome immediately, as we blink and then things fall apart. It takes its time. And no country, no matter how big or how capable, is immune, much less for our little TNT. Last story. This is just a brief mention, and just to kind of put an exclamation mark on how bad things still are, because it's not as though this is unprecedented. But a 61-year-old woman has reported that a man was more or less entered into her house with a firearm, struck her in the face, and then proceeded to rape her before he escaped. 61 years old. Doesn't seem that she was robbed for anything. There was no financial gain there. Maybe she has not necessarily taken stock of her house and her belongings, but this situation, both an elderly woman as well as the fact that it literally was, it was just a heinous crime for the sake of a heinous crime. On some level, I could understand robberies, even violent robberies. I could understand drug dealing, I could understand extortion, I could understand criminal acts used to illegally get money. Quick, easy, dirty money. But I could understand it. I don't agree with it, but I could understand it. Then there are crimes like this that I just, it's no longer greed. It's a next level of evil. It's a different level of self-centered self-appeasement, lack of consideration for the people around you. You're not just taking from them financially and making their life difficult. You're taking from them something very personal. You're intruding into their lives, disrupting their peace of mind on a way that I cannot say I have ever, nothing anywhere close to something like this. So I could only imagine what it must be like. In her bedroom, she wakes up to see a man with a gun and then proceeds to get raped. And if these sort of things are allowed to continue, I'm telling you, the breakdowns, it will only be a matter of time before the Wild West widens its scope and we'll be saying, oh my gosh, how did this happen? How did that happen? I would never imagine. Think about it. There are things that have happened within the last 3 to 5 years we would have never imagined happening in TNT, but they've happened. And somehow we haven't really kicked up much of a fuss about it, at least half the time, right? Children dying, it's all right, you know? These things happen, we jam in still. Just saying, it's not all at once. A rape here, a child murder there, and then in a few years from now we'll be wondering, how did we get here? All right, let's take a break. When we come back, crime talks did happen again, round 2 from the opposition leader. Stay tuned, we'll chew in on some of that, and then we'll transition to an economic topic that I want to hit again. Stay tuned to Talk About the WSN. We'll be right back.
Like many others trying to save on Carnival, Gabby thought she should go for 50% off makeup.
What about the other side? Well, Daisy 50% off offer. So you know?
No makeup artist we don't know. What we do know is the savviest savings for Carnival are at KFC. Get a Jab Jab box, 1-piece chicken, 1 regular fries, and a biscuit for only $25.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And we talk a lot about crime here on Talking Point, so I'm not always as animated as I was previously. But one of the things that I feel we need more of is more platforms, not just this show, not just radio shows or what have you, for the public to speak about crime. Now, the opposition leader, based on her office, the platform of her office, held another crime talks, this time in San Fernando. I believe it was at Naparima College. It could have been their auditorium or gymnasium. And we have a couple of photos of that I want you all to see. First off, of the opposition leader herself there on the first photo and her panel. And note how this is framed. And it might be nitpicking a little bit. And yes, as much as this is going to be praised, please don't get me wrong, I am not a supporter of the United National Congress. Technically, I am Switzerland when it comes to the political parties, regardless of where you see me. But look at how this is framed. Not a rising sun in sight. Granted, we all know, informally speaking, it's political, right? We all know that. But they're making an attempt to frame it in a way that isn't political, whether it is to fool us or whether it is to some extent genuine, to try to make it apolitical. At the end of the day, the banner is under the leader of the opposition, not the UNC. The banner is under the opposition. The response to this was a PNM political rally. I don't know why. Now, maybe that's just the PNM saying, look, let's be practical about this. We know it's political. We're going to debate it politically. Right? But at the end of the day, I think this is more effective when it comes to public relations, when it comes to communication. And it might be a minor thing, and maybe nobody agrees with me. But in my opinion, subconsciously, I think it matters. I think it matters, and I think it's smart. And at the end of the day, I'm going to praise things that are smart. Why not encourage more smart things? Because stupid communication happens too often. We don't just criticize the bad, we praise the good. Now, we have another picture of the audience, and this is a much bigger crowd than they had. I think the previous venue only had a capacity of 200, 250, something like that. I'm not too sure what the total was, but this looks bigger to me. And of course, not a yellow jersey or a flag in sight. I want to point out again, it's not a political rally. It got political, but what this was an avenue for people to speak their mind on crime. And they live streamed the event. I have a clip of one of the speakers that I want you all to hear because it'll lead into my next story as well. One of the citizens, right? There were many, and not all of it was about crime, but most of it, I believe, was. So let's get this clip. It's time now to cue this.
Good night, Honorable Leader. All other protocols observed. My name is Unil Jones, and I am from a humble village of Dow Village, South Oropuch, where it's mostly farming. And lo and behold, just before the Christmas, our farmers went in the field to water their crops. And 4 of their pumps, their water pumps, had gone. One guy lost 2. And the other 2 farmers lost 1 each. Up till this day, no one is arrested. No one was arrested. No pumps were discovered. You know what these fellas had to do? Go the next day in the store and buy new pumps, install them because they had crops on the ground that need watering. More so, down by the bay, where the fishermen are. One morning, them fellas get up to go and fish, and there were no boats. They were stolen. What I really want to say here today is we have a frightened, frustrated nation. Leading up to today, from 2015 coming up today, because when you look around, you see fuel going up, everything on the rise except salaries and jobs. Remember the day when the fella say if you're going in your fridge, and the man shut down petrol, and there was a lot of people went home. Contractors that worked in the refinery went home. And it trickled down. Because in those days, I used to do sales on a truck. And where I used to sell, people weren't buying anymore to operate their restaurant and their food business because there were no petrol workers to buy. They went home. This is why we are today. It didn't happen yesterday. The crime situation in this country didn't happen yesterday. It was coming down the road. Because when you have people at the top that don't really care, because I believe in this country today, all the systems has failed. The health system has failed. The protective system has failed. You go anywhere for service, all the government service in this country has failed us. The school, we don't talk about violence. I was amazed to see these videos, school violence. What are we coming to? Sometimes you go on social media, 3 men gone down, so are we in the Wild Wild West? Are we there? Lady, let me tell you something. You be the Moses and lead this country out of bondage. We are in bondage because if you're afraid to come out of your house, we are in bondage. And let me tell you something. When your children leave in your house to go to work, to go to school, you pray for them. Ask God to protect them. Because I believe that is the only protection we have today from the Father above. There's none other. All right? And before I close, I would like to say something to you all. Listen carefully. If you hire somebody to do a job in your home and they're wasting your material and not doing the job, what would we do? Whenever the day is called, people, I'm appealing to you, do not stay in your house. Because we are done sorry already of what is happening today. Let us not be more sorry. Let us come out and get rid of these people that govern us today. Because let me tell you something, them fellas don't have a clue, you know. All them know is to buffer people. The day you oppose them, they buffer you up.
The frustrations of a private citizen, and it's not something that we could ignore, right? Ideally, it's not something government will ignore because if politics matters, then these sorts of things, which I don't think are isolated, regardless of whether they're true or not, the sentiments to some extent, I believe, is widespread. And it's hard to argue against it, right? You might not be a supporter of the UNC, but at the end of the day, with regards to the hardships and then the compounding situation of the crime on top of the economic hardships, it's difficult to justify the status quo. Now, the opposition leader, one of the things she did mention, and she pounced on the opportunity, it was reported that the Prime Minister was having talks with the United States Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, with regards to commitments to addressing crime in the Caribbean. And I get it, I understand, right? A lot of the guns, particularly the composite material made firearms, they seemingly are coming from the United States. The only other jurisdiction they probably would be coming from would be Europe. I don't think they are Chinese made, and they're definitely not Russian made. So we want to stifle the supply, right? Technically, it's the same thing with drugs. That's where the big money is. That's how you deal with the source. That's where you'll probably get the most bang for your buck. I think the problem is, one, we've already estimated tens of thousands of guns are in this country. And a 10-year-old gun will kill somebody just about as easily in our environment, in a practical way, as a 5-year-old gun or a 1-year-old gun. You don't need a brand new modern firearm. In fact, the United States military is more or less using a derivative of their primary combat rifle that they've been using since, I believe, the 1970s or late 1960s. You don't need some brand new, spanking new, state-of-the-art gizmo doodaddy gun to kill somebody. So any old piece will do, right? We have them in the country already. The government themselves are making the case. This is the irony. They are making the case that under former Commissioner Griffith, this is the accusations they're throwing out. However many millions of rounds came in 2018, 2019, 2020, right? Okay, I get, or whichever 3 years he was commissioner. All right, I understand, I get it. I'm following you, 2020, 2021, what have you, right? Here's the thing. That's the point. We have to deal with that situation, right? You can't blame the man for a situation and then say, yeah, we're going to deal with the resource. But that situation brought stuff in, right? That's the whole thing that you're blaming him for. Stuff being in the country right now that we have yet to resolve its existence within our borders. We could sue gun manufacturers in the states all we want. Still doesn't change the fact that we have it here. Ironically, or curiously, when I showed you the picture of the panel with the opposition leader speaking to the crowd, one person who was there the last time, who wasn't there now, who was there in San but not there now, political leader of the NTA, Gary Griffith, he's going to have his own crime talks to launch a series of anti-crime solutions. He made this statement on Monday. All right, okay, I get it. I do wonder to what extent now, even the politics between the leaders of parties that are supposed to be somewhat aligned is affecting our crime talks. I do wonder. Our crime situation, our inability to come together to deal with it. To be fair to the opposition leader, she made a good point. You could speak to the Secretary of State to the US about dealing with the source. That's not going to necessarily deal with the immediate problems now. But what about the people of TNT? The Prime Minister has faced the fire before, but I don't know if he's faced the public on that level. He's faced his supporters. Most of the questions when he's out in the public are from his supporters. Not all, to be fair. But has he really faced the fire? And now the next question is, how many of the people in that crowd were not UNC supporters? Because to some extent, I'll always say, it takes two to tango with these crime talks. So the opposition leader, on one hand, it's effective. Don't get me wrong, it's more effective than what the PNM is doing. But it still underlines the fact that I saw neither side actually make the extra effort to compromise to try to get these talks. I did not see the extra effort to compromise. I saw the lip service. I saw the pre-functionary effort. I saw the, well, we did it. We did the minimum that we had to do of what we should do, and it wasn't enough, so it's their fault. That's what I saw. And this is what we have. All right, we're not going to take a break. I want to get this point on. Notice what the speaker, I wanted to highlight that member of the public because he pointed out the crimes against farmers. And we have an issue with regards to food security and also diversification of the economy. And I made the case yesterday, well, I get it, foreign exchange could be impacting that, but shouldn't we, to diversify economy, in part because of our problems with foreign exchange, try to find things that we don't need as much foreign exchange for? And agriculture seems to be one of the obvious things. So there's two things I want to highlight. First, we have a report from Barbados today with regards to their sugar industry. It's been on the ropes, but they're still trying to plug away at it. So, again, let's cue this.
We are taking back on people based on tasks. So we're getting the factory ready for this sugar harvest, which we want to start again early. And therefore, just over 100 persons were at Portville factory this morning to receive their new engagement letters and to be briefed on the process going forward. and to start the work on the factory so that we can have the factory up and running. Obviously, you're going to need the administrative staff as well, so some administrative staff are also there. And here at Buckley is the same thing. These are people who will be working in the shops and some who will be working out in the fields. And a similar thing took place here as well, where people got their new engagement letters and they have been properly briefed on the way forward. And the workers are very happy from what I have seen from interacting. And what we have to do now is keep the pressure on so that this can go forward successfully. I know there are a lot of people who would wish for this to fail because typically we don't look after ourselves. We feel that other people can do these things better than we can. And so typically, rather than embrace the fact that 1,100 workers will get shares in an entity, that they didn't have to purchase those shares, but that this responsible government is putting in the investment for those shares, and that 25% shareholding is being kept by the government so that other Barbadians can purchase those shares once they feel comfortable enough. Sometimes people are so skeptical that, they'd rather see it happen first. And then they co-op, taking up 55% of that shareholding. But never in our history has a government really take a state-owned enterprise, get private investment to come in, invest in shares for the workers. Workers will get their severance pay as well, in addition to getting back a job. They have received vacation money and payment in lieu of notice. These workers have had the best of both worlds. And yes, is it a perfect transition? No, it was not perfect. I wish that everything had happened perfectly. But perfection is the obstacle to progress. And if I had gone for perfection, we'd be still fighting at this all now. What I do have now is a new entity that is taking over the sugar industry. The employees are not disadvantaged. They got back their jobs. They got their just worth. They get shares. And what we have now is to make sure that the sugar industry now can take us to renewable energy to the extent that we have scale and to the extent that the profits are guaranteed for the new owners.
Now, Barbados' sugar industry, that report from Barbados Today, by the way, their sugar industry, it's not as though things were hunky-dory. But notice, they still have a sugar industry while we don't. Now, granted, it's a complex thing. But one of the reasons why their sugar industry was, kind of on the ropes coming out of the end of last year into this year was that the business model, I guess you could say, that was set up really caused the state-owned side of the industry to experience losses because it was selling to a private entity who would then mark it up for retail, and how to put it, they would enjoy a significant amount of the profits. That doesn't necessarily mean, or while the state-owned part of the entity, the production side, was incurring millions of dollars in losses. So it implies that as an industry, the product should be viable just once it is properly managed, and there are a lot of questions about that. So this initiative is with regards to that. Now, Barbados also has issues with its non-sugar agriculture. They're not necessarily seeing the growth, and in some cases, they're not seeing the same level of production that they saw maybe during COVID. Could it be because people who started farming during COVID as jobs kind of got scarce, and then they went back to those jobs when COVID was over, although it technically it isn't? It's a complex issue. But my point is the potential is there for Barbados. What about here? What about here? And I get it. If we implement things poorly, and we manage things poorly, and we maintain things poorly, the results are going to be poor. But that doesn't mean that the endeavor is incorrect. Now, Barbados doesn't have oil. We have oil, so that's usually the implied argument, right? We need to put more emphasis on oil. Let's not put emphasis on agriculture. We don't need that. We don't need to do that right now, right? Don't mind that food security and food inflation from abroad was kicking our tails 2 years ago. But there's somebody else who has oil, not too far from us. And they also, I don't know, they seem to be looking to put in a little bit of effort. Let's cue this one.
President Irvinali has made a pitch for an increase in trade between Africa and the Caribbean, explaining that opportunities exist for massive benefits to both Africa and the Caribbean. The president, who was on an official visit to Ghana over the weekend, noted that in order to achieve the increases, systems must be put in place to fix the trade barriers and issues with transport and logistics. During a panel discussion as part of the Africa Prosperity Dialogue Summit, President Ali, who is also the current chair of CARICOM, was adamant that both Africa and the Caribbean can benefit from the opportunities which exist. And pointing specifically to aquaculture as an example, the president said that the size of the aquaculture market in the U.S. is $4 billion annually. And Guyana is among the most competitive countries when it comes to aquaculture and the production of fish products for the U.S. market. During his presentation, the president also underscored that the Caribbean and Africa need to work together on other important issues, such as climate change and energy security.
So that's the president of Guyana, you know, the one Caribbean nation whose energy industry and by extension the economy is on the rise. Now, of course, I am not in Guyana. I don't know to what extent these initiatives are really playing a factor. But if they are putting attention there, specific attention to specific industries, identifying key areas where, hey, let's push this. Let's push this for both trade to the US as well as trade to Africa, right? Let's not just limit ourselves, but we're not going to try and do everything. We're going to just say agriculture, right, and not have a specific plan. Let's go with this specific thing because we see the potential. They have oil and gas. They don't need to do this right now, but maybe they've learned from the mistake of TNT, of Venezuela, and other nations who acted like the Novo rich. You know, never see, come see. Hey, we get money. We don't need to worry about things anymore. Never thought about what to do when the money runs out, right? Thinking that it'll last forever. We know it's not going to last forever, but we acted in a manner where it seemed as though we were still thinking. We were acting like if it was going to last forever. So Barbados, of course, yeah, it's easy for them. They need to do everything that they can. They don't have an energy sector like we do, like Guyana does. We don't have an energy sector like Guyana does. But it's interesting that it seems as though the president of Guyana is more concerned about food security than, say, we are. And I wonder, what does that mean? You know, we are looking to, our fortunes is dependent on other people's resources. That's where we've reached right now. That's the good news that all the reports have for us that came out at the start of this year. We're well positioned to exploit other people's resources. But what about developing our own industries? When will the time become right? By the way, I mean, listen, you don't build Rome in a day. Just like how societies don't crumble all at once. You don't just blink and all of a sudden you go from a prosperous society to a disastrous society. That's not how it happens. You also don't get to prosperity by blinking. You don't get to prosperity by one photo opportunity, one project, one contract, and then we're good. That's not how this works. And of course, we know it. We all know it. Those in power know it. But they act like if it's all about the short term. It's all about the quick rich schemes. And there's basically, in real life, in normal life, there are two quick rich ways, right? There are two ways to get rich quick. One is crime, which we mentioned before, and the other one is all kind of scams and pyramid schemes and all kind of smart manisms. And I get it. There's no bravery to step out beyond oil and gas, but one would think, yes, the Minister of Energy needs to focus on energy. And yes, at times, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs needs to be involved because there's a lot of high-level diplomacy. These are foreign companies and governments that we have to negotiate with. I get it. There's a whole cabinet, right? A whole cabinet of ministers, most of whom we don't hear nothing from. What about them? What about the whole Ministry of Agriculture? What about the whole Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development? I mean, the traffic situation is probably, in terms of ease of getting a solution, it's not going to be easy. It's just easier than fixing education, fixing public health, fixing crime, and fixing the economy. And our traffic situation, it will be easier, still hard, still expensive, but cheaper, and it would impact all of these things. It will impact all of these things. Stress matters with regards to health. I can tell you right now, my cardiologist, one of the main things he was concerned about me with was stress. So, I don't know if we're happy with a government that basically consists of, 3 or 4 people do some work and then everybody else is just there to collect a check. Because it seems as though government work extends to parliament. Everybody wants a real work, a government work, where they just show up, collect a check, and then go back home. Do they do anything? I don't know. I don't see it. Your government working for you? Maybe. No transparency, so how am I supposed to know? And this is what we accept. And make no mistake, was it really that different under other administrations, whether the same party or not? Not really. Not really, because the environment has persisted for so long, it's the status quo. That's part of the reason why it's hard to change. Nobody wants a change. And bureaucracies as big as an entire national government has an inertia to change that we could only imagine. It's always hard to get things like this to change at this scope, at this level. But especially if we, the people, don't seem to care about it. Yeah, we'll say, oh, they're bad and we need to get them out and we'll replace somebody with the next group that's going to do just about the same thing. They'll be packaged differently. How they do it might be different. Who benefits might be different, will it? But it'll more or less be the same, right? The effect for most of us will be the same. Yes, the base, the core areas, for one party, they will get the better treatment when their party in power and vice versa. But that is not an entire standard of living make. Crime will still be crime, whether your MP has more hampers to give you or not. Your low levels of wages when compared to rising cost of food will remain low, whether your MP has extra jobs to give out or not. You're not necessarily going to get them jobs. They're not necessarily going to be enough. Okay, maybe you get your roads paved more often. That just means the criminals have nicer roads to drive their getaway cars on. Your community might be better serviced under the party you support, but if the country collapses around you, crumbles around your community, then what difference does it make in the long run? So we play in these political games, and then we want to lament the fact that, hey, why things not so bad and they're not getting better? Let's take a flyer on the next set of people who have similar ideas, who communicate in the same lowbrow way, and who aren't any more interested in working with the other side than this group of people that's currently in government. Think about it, right? Jack Warner was seen as one of the best ministers under the People's Partnership. Why? He just showed up to work. That's it. He didn't solve a national catastrophe. He didn't untie the Gordian knot. He didn't throw back the barbarians at the gate. He just showed up to do his job, and he was the best thing in the partnership. That is how low the standard is. Think about it. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we open the phone lines. I've spoken enough. I want to hear from you, the viewer. Call in, let me know where you disagree with me. That's fine. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WESN. We'll be right back after this.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point. WSN, your content capital. As I said, often imitated, never duplicated. Sean Michael Small, open up the phone lines. Want to hear from you, the viewer, about what is going on. I get it. Like the professor from Shogunas, we might just be pissing and you win, talking about the same things over and over in a circle. But here's the thing. I don't think we could give up on the conversations. I don't think we should give up on the conversations. And we've reached the point where there have been enough disappointments, I think. We've forgotten some of them. Hey, anybody remember the Brent Thomas situation? And what, that should be a big deal, right? It's almost like if we just completely forgot that. I could be, so many things are ANV drilling. Anybody remember ANV drilling? No? Maybe? Maybe not. So many things have happened, and I don't want them to be forgotten. Because at the end of the day, when we forget, we don't hold our elected representatives responsible. We don't hold them to account. And for all intents and purposes, that's how they get away with things. We have our first caller for the morning, Tuna Puna on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on there.
Yeah. I have my point of view. And in general, I'm going to start like this. Economic prosperity is like a flower. When it blooms, but it fades after a time and causes doom. No one loves farming and hard-working farmers to produce food which every living thing needs always to survive. And when they are hungry. Up to now, no one heed the call up for help where previous larceny is concerned. Nothing is being done about that. Farmers are being hurt and they are suffering, and all of us will suffer in the long run with starvation. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. And it's an important point you made there, right? We're not heeding the cries of previous larceny, and I think that's one of the crimes that it compounds. It sets a bad precedent, right? Once they get away with it, they'll keep doing it. We already heard from former Mayor Mr. Regrello from San Fernando with regards to the fact that the municipal police doesn't seem to want to actually do their part to enforce just the simple regulations on High Street, right? We've spoken about parking on the Eastern Main Road, lack of enforcement of traffic regulations, and a whole host of other regulations. And pretty lastly, when people get away with these simple crimes, not only does it encourage more people to do it, but then it will encourage more people to break bigger laws. We have Dabadi on the line. Good morning. Morning, caller. You on there?
Hi, morning.
Morning, morning.
Yeah, wonderful program as usual. I just wanted to comment on the a comment that the host made concerning the Jack Warner as a minister, and he said that the standard of the ministers was so low that Jack did nothing. But I just wanted to correct him and let him know that Mr. Warner started work every morning from about 3 in the morning at his office in Shogunas. And if you consider that as doing nothing, with long lines of people coming to see him, and then his accomplishment at the Ministry of Works, I don't think we could just say that that is nothing. So I think that he actually performed. Have a nice day, have a safe carnival, wonderful program as usual.
Thank you, caller. Maybe I framed it wrong, because I didn't necessarily want to imply that he did nothing, right? Granted, yes, the case that you made there, to some extent, the level that he worked might have been beyond the minimum. But my point was, it's not as though he had to deal with some extraordinary situation, at least in my memory. And when I say extraordinary, I mean something really far out there, right? That will be remembered forever. For the most part, on a basic level, what he did is what we should be asking our ministers to do. Maybe not come out from 3 in the morning, right? And that's where he might have separated himself from the standards, the actual standards, but making yourself available, showing up to do your work, tackling with the bureaucracy and the inertia and all of the problems dealing with the public service. A lot of the things that he did, a lot of the basic things that he did, that should be the standard of what ministers should be doing. And to be fair to him, whether we like him or not, we should give him props for doing it, because in my mind, too many ministers don't. So at the end of the day, he did step out ahead of the pack with regards to that. But I understand your point. I did not mean to make it seem I was disparaging him and his efforts to that degree that I probably did. We have Shogunas on the line. Good morning, caller. Caller, you on the air? Good morning.
Good day, Sean.
Good day.
I heard you talk about the UNC conversation on crime. When do you know when they're going to have this? When it started off, they just say the next one is going so this. Now you're hearing it after it done pass. I have been trying to find out when they come into your bonus here. You have any idea?
Well, I'm not sure, but
I went on their website.
Yeah.
And they don't have it. Right? That is to show you how serious our politicians are about crime. Yesterday you talked about this person who fell off San Fernando Hill.
Yes.
Now, San Fernando Hill was a mining area, right? Made to get San Fernando gravel in. And when we had the colonial government here, and you get permission to mine, one of the things they put in all of these, you have to restore the area to a safe area. Right? But from the time we get independence, we forget all about that. And people mining and leaving these things out just how they are. Right? If you remember some time ago, on the corner of Pointe-a-Pierre Road and Circular Road, which is on one corner of the San Fernando Hill, there's a guy who have a business place, and he decided to extend it on the hill. They had a set of noise in San Fernando every time. And he cut the hill and he one steep thing, and it is still there. These are the reasons for these things. Nobody in government today I hear people talk about this minister. I don't know of one single ministry which performed. Any question before we go?
No, thank you for that. That's a good point with regards to quarrying and the state of our environment, I guess you could say, and the lack of maintenance, implementation, the lack of following the rules, the lack of law and order. It comes back down to that, the lack of law and order, which you always say. Thank you, caller. Yeah, and I'll say it again for him. We think it might be a small thing, right? We're so accustomed to taking shortcuts and disregarding the rules, and it's not enforced, and maybe sometimes we actually think, well, you know, it's not really that important because they don't enforce it, right? Because they have situations like that, like the PH taxi situation. If they actually, you know, stuck harsh to the law, stating traffic rules and whatever, they turn a blind eye to, and the police will say, well, if we enforce everything. But to some extent, the flip side to that is if we don't, people take it for granted, and then they start to think that they're entitled to not following the rules and regulations. It's like if you ever went on the ferry, you're going to check in. There will always be somebody, particularly with the Tobago Tunnel, because most people will form a neat line. And then there'll be always somebody who tries to skip the line. You do that enough times, and then instead of having a neat line where things are in order, you wait your turn, it will be a fight and a push because there'll be a crowd in front of the window. Now, the good customer service reps, they will basically understand, recognize what's happening, and tell the people to go to the back of the line and stop trying to cut through. But when now it's time to disembark from the boat, again, if you've traveled on the ferry enough times, you would recognize that it becomes a free-for-all. Even the little grannies looking to push themselves through, trying to get off as quickly as possible, right? No, it's not the neat lines that we might have had in the terminal to check in. Those are disappeared. They're gone. Why? Because the expectations are, well, this is not a thing here. We're entitled to. Don't bother us. And then we want to ask why things are broken down. And again, I mentioned implementation, maintenance. Yes, it makes sense. What happens after we quarry? I mean, town and country planning with regards to property developments, whether it's a house, whether it's a group of townhouses on this hill, that hill, the next hill, then we want to know, hey, why we have drainage problems when we've basically deforested our hills and turned them into concrete, well, platforms and surfaces. And where's the water to go there? Well, it'll just run straight down, pool into the valleys, and what used to be a river that could deal with the amount of water coming down the hill now turns into a flood zone, a floodplain, or what have you. So the numbers are up on your screen. Call in, have your say. The crime talks, that's an interesting point. I would imagine that politically, the political supporters of the UNC would get updates. I do get updates from various political channels. I'm not a supporter, so I subscribe to more than one. But for the common citizen who is interested, and I would encourage common citizens who are not necessarily supporters to go to these things to say their piece, at least to speak to one side, regardless of which one they get to, right? Yes, it's kind of a shame that the notices, I don't know how in advance and what channels, it might be on their social media, like Facebook. That might be where to see them. We have a caller from Tobago, is it? Sorry.
It was Arima.
I misheard. Arima caller. I am very sorry for that. Good morning. You're on the air.
Morning.
Morning.
Sean?
Yes.
Last night I looked at the UNC crime talks, and I heard the wife of one of the divers, and I was in shock to know that the guards at the gate lied to these people. Nobody never informed these people. As a matter of common courtesy, common decency, and respect for life. And then when you listen to some of the comments that the politicians had to make after these people lose their life and talking about compensation. So you're telling me the lawyer fees are more important than than people living? This is, and the board still refusing to even step down. Trinidad's going through it. Sorry to say that. Yeah, thanks.
Now, I think the money is not for the lawyers. I think it's for the families, or at least that's part of the conversation. So I don't know if there's two conversations going on. But yes, I saw some of it. I'll be honest. It's hard. It is hard. I don't know. I'm not involved. I'm not involved with Paria in any way, shape, or form, right? But here's the thing with Paria. Here's the thing. I am a member of the public. I am a member of the voting public. Ultimately speaking, it is our collective responsibility who's in power. And then it's that person's collective responsibility of who they appoint to state boards. It's their responsibility to then how the state entity is operating. Now, from what I understand, there's even questions on if certain people within Paria had their contracts extended while the process of inquiring as to what happened. I don't know how true that is, right? But all of that, even the accusation now when you have a transparency deficit, will hurt you because you're not doing enough to make us, to dissuade our fears, to dissuade our concerns. And this Paria situation, I don't know. I am not involved in any way, shape, or form. I don't know if I could face those families. Anything I have to say to them would be not good enough. Not good enough. Because I am a part of society that is allowing this to happen. It's a hell of a thing with regards to responsibility, right? And to be fair, I'm not blaming the rest of you in the public. I'm not. It's just that on some level, right, we would like to think that if it happened to us, we would get decent treatment. Because the thing is, I don't know if the security guards lied or not, right? There's a whole lot of implications there. But I do know this, they were stuck outside. So even if they weren't lied to, it's bad enough. It's bad enough. And to be fair, I think it's reasonable to think that they got all kind of misinformation and they were lied to. It's reasonable to think that way based on what we know from the Commissioner of Inquiry report as to how that situation was managed. It's not unreasonable. And you're right. This is what we have in TNT. Sweet, right? Real sweet. It's sweet for 1.49999999999999995 million of us. But for 5 gentlemen, it wasn't so sweet. The crude was sweet, but it didn't taste that sweet. And 4 of them paid a hell of a price. And the thing is, let's not mix matters. The survivor is paying a price. I don't know if I was in that position, if I would feel lucky, or if the regret will eat away at my soul. Because I tried not to watch through her everything that she had to say. But the emotion was still raw for her. How do you get over that? How do we get over this? The unfortunate truth is, Paria is just but 4 of many lives lost under circumstances that should not have happened. You're not going to get rid of all accidents. You're not going to get rid of all murders. There's no such thing as a society with 0. We ain't going to have perfection. I get that. But you know, and bigger countries have done just as bad or worse jobs. I get that too, but that's not an excuse. You know, there's something to be said about having realistic expectations, but they were just as bad is not a we could be bad too excuse. It's not justifiable. And again, the lack of transparency in the situation brings up these things like them being lied to. If you want to give us a reasonable explanation as to why that is so, we need to believe in what you have to say. And a lack of transparency makes that too difficult. But I think the difference is, because we've seen videos of people get shot, people get attacked, right? Most recently, with regards to the owner of the gym in Long Circular Mall, in the car park, there were videos of him after the shooting, injured, his face torn up by a bullet. I think it grazed the side of his face. It might not have penetrated, I'm not sure. I don't think that was disclosed, the extent of his injuries. That is probably highly traumatic. If your face is injured by a gun, your life flashed before your eyes. I could only imagine what he went through. But based with my limited understanding, my impression of what it might be, I don't think that compares to being stuck in a pipe for a couple of hours, maybe even days, slowly suffocating while you go delirious and you can't see a damn thing. And you're basically watching death creep up on you in the dark. Slowly but surely. It's a nightmare. And this is what we're basically allowing if we do not get a proper resolution to this situation. Precedents. Maybe Colin Piper got an extension on his contract. Does he deserve it? I don't know. Based on the Commission of Inquiry report, maybe not. Has anybody looked into that? I don't know. Should he lose his job? The flip side is, should we set the precedent? Yeah, you could mess up the incident command post, the incident response. Potentially. That's what it seems like in the report, right? I mean, at the very least, they don't have proper records on what happened. Because there's conflicting reports of when Mr. Piper took control of the situation. Did he take control of the situation before he reached or after? Right? They don't seem to be able to properly account who was responsible as the situation unfolded. That alone is a red flag. Is it criminally negligent? Are criminal charges coming from that? I don't know. I am very much nowhere near ready to say that. I am not a lawyer and I'm not going to speculate on that. It's up to the DPP. But precedents are being set on this. And there are political ramifications that I don't think, I'll be honest, I think the PNM really aren't thinking this through. They're not. To what extent are the political connections of the board appointees on the Paria board, they're too beholden to that. They don't want to rock that boat. To what extent is that the case? I don't know, but again, a lack of transparency means you've left me with nothing but to speculate. The chairman of the board, isn't the chairman? Isn't he the husband of the Speaker of the House? That's what happens when you do things like this. When you, to some extent, leave room for accusations of nepotism or the like. Then when something goes wrong, you see, it would have been all well and good if nothing went wrong. And I could understand that the Prime Minister probably did not want to have to deal with this headache. On a practical level, to be fair to the man. Because my political appointee is not dealing with a situation as well as he probably should be doing. And now I have to clean up this mess. You're in the big chair. You are the Prime Minister. That's the price. When these things comes up and delegation ain't working, you have to deal with it. There was a lot of talk about legacy of the PNM at the reopening of Balize House. To what extent do we ignore all of these less than stellar situations? A lot of people love to remember the good stuff, they want to ignore the bad, right? All of this is recent memory. We have an election coming up in 2025. And this is the type of response we get. I'm sorry, a long-winded soliloquy on this whole situation, but it's as much as I appreciate the Commission of Inquiry report being released to the public, I feel as though they're trying to be neutral to the point where they're not actually doing anything. They don't want to do anything because they don't want to rock the boat with anybody. But the public is looking on and seeing the lack of action and the lack of results, and it's disappointing to them. And it's disappointing to me too. And I'm pretty sure, you want to know one of the reasons why I have criminals on the streets? Because things like this could happen. And a lack of repercussions and consequences. They don't care about suspensions, right? So what? I get suspended. So what? 4 men died. They're not even suspended. That's the example we started for the next generation. I want to thank all my callers. I am sorry for the pessimism, but I guess I'm trying to be practical and realistic. Why? Because if we want to do better, we can't ignore all the negative things that's happening now that has happened in the past. Today can be a good day. We can make it if we try. As my co-host always says, even with all the pessimism, I still believe in TNT. And I will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Now this is the part when the bacchanal start boy, fretting from your heart, yeah. This is how you fall.
Boss, you drink, so you can't drive. Full stop. Playing it smart this carnival. Get a designated driver. Call a taxi or call a friend. Rum and road don't mix. Drive smart to be safe this carnival. This is Eddie Charles. Now this is the part when the bacchanal start. We playing it smart. This is a euphoric feeling.
Green, oh yeah, you're about to experience the whole thing. Oh yeah.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional
And we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sport?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former Mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook. Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.